Welcome back, folks, to another episode of Crithit Coffee Break. Today we're going to be finishing off our series on depression. More or less this... Okay, well there's actually going to be still a couple more parts to this, but this is the final round. In this one, the topic is going to be basically escapism and its relation to gaming. I'm Arlyeon, for those who don't actually know my voice, and today I'm here with Shrimp.
Hey.
Harmonic, or Phil.
Hello.
We also have Chariot Rider.
Hello.
Which, if you folks recognize him from his YouTube, it'll also, or if you don't, there's also going to be a link to it in the description. And Frootsnoops, who's one of our merry members from our Discord.
What's up, gamers?
And by the way, for those of you who don't remember, Harmonic is actually a dev we interviewed recently.
Oh yeah, and he was also in, like, the developer podcast part of this series. Mm-hmm.
Just can't keep me away.
No, I can't. It's just too fun to have you here. Alrighty, so we are actually fairly on top of this since we have a number of subjects that we'd like to cover. And also, thank you, Chariot, for helping sort of gather a bunch of these into a bunch of bullet points that we could use.
You're welcome for that. A quick Google search is really all I did for this. I can't claim I'm an expert in anything.
I mean, I had loose ideas, and you basically touched, like, on a bunch of them, and then just actually wrote them down while I was flailing about, like, how do I make this sound good? So, future Shrimp, please edit that. It damages my image.
Yeah.
Anyways, so for those who want a quick Google definition, and in case Shrimp is too lazy to edit it straight into the video, please do it, please. Escapism is the avoidance of unpleasant, boring, arduous, scary, or banal aspects of daily life. It can also be used as a term to define the actions people take to help relieve persisting feelings of depression or general sadness. And considering that there has been a lot of talk about gaming addiction as a form of illness these days, I actually felt it very pertinent to bring up this as one of the reasons people do delve into gaming, not necessarily as an addiction per se, but potentially as a coping mechanism, as a means of escape, of finding a refuge from those feelings of depression or sadness that they might be suffering, whether they are temporary effects of day-to-day life or something more persistent. So I suppose first off, for you folks, what elements make for a good escapist game?
Well, I guess it really depends on the person. I've just sort of heard general things. For me, it's generally going to be a game that I'm very experienced with, so that's going to be like TF2, Spelunky. I don't have to put a whole lot of mental effort into, being good at these games. I can just sit down and generally do fairly well.
Wait, you're good at Spelunky?
I actually just beat it for the first time today.
Bastard.
So I'm like super proud of that.
So bad at that game.
It is
I've
brutal.
only gotten to like the first level of the plant world.
I got to the place with like the pharaoh dudes,
Oh yeah, the temple.
and then I died. And I was just like, I'm done. I got to the temple. It's like Ninja Gaiden, the first one. I got to the castle and the game is done. Okay, so for you, it's things that you're good at that you sort of can refine yourself at.
Yeah, something I don't, have to put a whole lot of mental effort into. I can just sort of sit back and, not have to worry about failing.
Okay. What about you, Shrimp?
For me, I mean, it's for just any game I like, but as far as games I like, it'll probably be anything that, as long as it's fair. So, I feel like my life is unfair enough. So, any game that I don't, any game that I don't feel is fair will probably annoy me more than.
So
you're not bringing
roguelikes
out.
are not what you're delving into.
Wait, what?
So, question. Would that mean you would not escape into Binding of Isaac?
Yeah, well, see, the thing about that one, it would be because that one's too gross for me, but yeah, probably not.
Okay, what about you, Fruit?
I don't know. The game's like, for me, a game to be a good escapist game. I don't know. I just tend to stick to games that like try to innovate in some way, like gameplay wise, or maybe games with deep stories. Like, I don't know. I really like Binding of Isaac. I don't know.
Tumbleweed. No, I mean, I get that. There is a lot there with, like, Edmund's game. Some people are like, art game and all of its open-endedness, but I mean, it is an interesting thing for how it's built if you go delving into that side of things. And I was like, well, I'm never beating this, so I'm just gonna go and, like, wiki search. And then I read an entire wiki. Twice. I still don't fully get it. There's a lot there.
Well, with, like, Isaac in particular, I like how it's kind of open-ended. There's no specific set end, and you can just basically pick it up and put it down whenever you please.
Fair enough. Suppose in my case, I like hard games. Like, I enjoy challenging myself. I enjoy, like, I will just throw myself at some really terrible challenges at time. There's a limit to that. When things get unfair, though I suppose my definition of unfair is a little bit different from Shrimp's. I just have, like, a
Definitely.
huge aversion to, like, unavoidable instant death, for instance, and there's some JRPG games that just love to throw that at you and they don't even have any means of defense against it, and I'm just like, there wasn't even a save point for an hour. It was like a cutscene and then this. No. But no,
Yeah,
I
agree that a game has to be fair.
I mean, things that I can lose myself into, whether it's through refining things or practice, whether it's like lore hunting, which I've done in some games, or like enthusiastically going to like the far reaches of the game to find like secrets and collectibles and stuff. It's like some of it's just like gotta get all the gear. It's fun. So like Souls was really good and Salt in the Sanctuary for me. Really liked Valdis' story. Like, I went back to that game again and again and again.
I mean, I enjoyed the Souls games too, except for Dark Souls 3, which I feel is unfair. Like that dragon we were fighting together that one time, I forgot what his name was. He's like a DLC dragon boss in Dark Souls 3.
That shit heap. I love him though.
But like you just said, things that you can practice and get better at. We didn't get better at him. Like
I did.
Okay, well, I felt like we weren't getting better. It was pretty random, like how well we would do. And whenever, I beat it. Well, whenever you beat him, it's like I don't
Figured
know.
out how to dodge his beam cannon, and his ghosts, and his melee.
Well, a lot of the bosses in that game, I feel like I don't get better at them. I just randomly beat them, and if I was to retry them, I'm not that much better at them than, like, after I beat them. It's not like I'm gonna be able to beat them again easily. But in other games, I felt like I got better at them and can beat them consistently.
I mean, it depends on how consistent an enemy's attack patterns are, I feel, because like the more they have some form of randomization or differences in how a boss might react, it sort of definitely impacts that. If you can essentially always predict what a boss is going to do, which will happen in things like early NES games, SNES, even some like PlayStation 2 games, you can just bait enemies into doing the exact same move over and over again, or they're very clearly telegraphed. And there's telegraphs in Dark Souls, but like the game's a bastard and some of those bosses even have fake outs. So like I can understand the thing of like it can be difficult to feel like you're making progress, but at the same time you go from like sometimes walking in and just getting killed right at the word go to actually being able to whittle them down to half to the next phase to killing them. It's not like a clear-cut process of I've definitely conquered this boss and can always beat him, but I felt that was actually part of the things that helped make that game immersive for me. Was I wouldn't just walk in there and be like, oh, well, it's time for this and I'm gonna have a cup of coffee, make some toast, butter a sandwich, and watch a show while clicking buttons and beating him and not really looking. Stops being super immersive to me. It's just like it is a thing I'm doing while doing other stuff and maybe working. If I can't focus on like my work brain or my stress brain and the only thing I can focus on is like do not die, that's where it's like escapism for me, is where the only thing that I have on my mind is that game. So Dark Souls like hits that spot fairly well for me.
Yeah, I mean, we'll probably just have to disagree there to not make this the Dark Souls podcast, but I think Dark Souls 3 is where they lost the fairness in the series.
I mean, I also haven't played the first one or the second one. My actual experiences with the Souls series is Demon Souls and Dark Souls 3.
I mean, the closest thing I've gotten is Cuphead.
I mean, that does not
and
count.
that's not really. No, I that's more of a joke, really.
Yeah, I know, because it was
the Dark Souls of cartoon.
Fuck.
Bullet Hells, that's what it was.
Yeah, it's the Dark Souls of Bullet Hells, which, thank you.
Yes.
Who was that did that one? It's like Kotaku or Polygon, but you guys can get fucked. Especially
There's
Kotaku
also-
for stealing our story. Get wrecked.
There's also like Skyrim with guns
What?
for Far
Whoa,
Cry
I mean-
3.
Fallout 4 is Skyrim with guns, though.
I was actually gonna say, like, why don't you just compare, like, yeah, actually, yeah, thank you, Fallout, because, you know, same engine. Just one has VAC. That is.
But yeah, if the comparison was made for 3, then yeah, that's out of line.
But for, like, I enjoyed Cuphead a lot, and that did end up being escapist to a degree for me, but it was less so, I guess, because it was a lot easier to die, and so it sort of pumped me out, and so I didn't get that, like, same flow. I guess I had, like, for something like that, it would be like Hotline Miami would have been more escapist for me than Cuphead, because there was a very distinct flow to it, and they broke it up a little bit more with Cuphead, like in between when you die. It didn't just like immediately fire you back in. It was still like very engrossing while you're fighting, but if it transitioned a bit more seamlessly, I probably wouldn't have been as aware of time and other stuff and been like, whorf, death number like 73, here I go.
Yeah, and I think Cuphead is sort of inconsistent with like the quality of like its bosses, because there are some of them that are super consistent and well telegraphed. Like I think the pirate boss is like the best boss in the game. You know what's going on, but it's still tough. But then you get like the dragon, where like, you know, depending on how the clouds come out, like you could just get some attacks that are nearly impossible through no fault of your own. That's just
I perfected
RNG.
that dragon, actually. So it's not entirely RNG, but like that thing took so long to master. And I went from like just being... by the way, that's on normal, not on hard. I have done very little in Cuphead on hard. though I have done some. And that game is a bastard on hard. On normal, though,
Master normal.
I could actually, like, perfect a good chunk of things. And the dragon is hard. It is actually one of the biggest stumbling points I had in the game, other than the king dice fight, just because it was, like, a huge endurance match. And I was terrible at dice rolls for the longest time until I figured out, like, how it worked. Because I wasn't paying attention at first. And so I basically ended up fighting everything every time.
Did we already hear from Harmonic on what makes the escapist game for him?
No.
Oh, then take
Would
it
you
away.
like to?
Yes. Yes.
So I'm actually doing that right now, playing Black Desert Online, and I am actually escaping, very much so. I've had pretty traumatic stuff going on that I'm not going to talk about here, but our host knows about it, and I actually would rather reference a like way back in the Stone Age, when I was in college. I had, like, so don't tell my wife, but I had, the one that got away, the girl of my dreams, right? I was, we were gonna get married and all that stuff, and then, she ended up, on my senior year of college, she ended up leaving me for a professor who was about twice her age. So that was awesome. And
Wow.
and we were in the same class in the same degree program. So
Was it the professor of that degree?
no, thank God it was actually a totally different college. Within that same university, but he was not part of that music program. But anyway, so I did end up having to attend those classes with her, and seeing her, like, before everyone knew she got together with this professor, everyone was just, like, hitting on her, and, like, this is really traumatizing for me to go through. Either I do that or I, like, delay my graduation date, so I kind of had to put up with it. And the only way I got solace from all this was to hop into Final Fantasy Online. It's kind of a bold statement, but I think that's actually what did it. And I instantly felt free. It was kind of a prison, a torture prison, dealing with this ex of mine, And the moment that I got this massive dopamine rush from playing Final Fantasy Online and MMO, it was liberating. It was super liberating, and that's kind of happening right now. I don't think it'll be quite as because that was several years of me not doing anything else, basically, but playing MMORPGs. So obviously, this escapism can be taken to an unhealthy extreme, but
Been there.
I have actually gone to therapy about this specific thing, and it was explained to me as basically the brain seeks chemicals, and you're not getting your serotonin and oxytocin from normal relationship and career success. It's going to seek dopamine from reward actions, and video games are getting so good at telling your brain to produce dopamine. Basically cycles of increasing capability of your character, barriers that are lowered. Reaching the next level is a dopamine hit. Finding a new piece of gear, dopamine. So, and games escalate that, like, as time goes on. This game, Black Desert Online, is unbelievably good at it. It's so addictive because everything about it makes you want to continue and continue and continue forever and ever, because you're continuing to get an ever increasing dopamine rush. So I guess that's kind of the dark side of this whole thing, That's apparently that's my job, is to always go to the dark side of these subjects. But I don't know if anyone else has kind of experienced the whole MMO addiction thing, but
DFO. For like
What's that?
how many years? How many years was that shrimp?
It's been a lot of years.
It's like Dungeon Fighter Online, an MMO me and Shrimp have played and still occasionally dabble back into, and like, despite the fact that it was owned by like a super not great company that like such cash grabby, terrible managing of the game originally, Nexon, if you're familiar with them, they're not good. They are not good. Anyways, the original owners of the company ended up picking up the game after Nexon shut it down because they just couldn't run it correctly because they're money-grubbing hoes. I don't know. You know what? Bleep out the hose part of that and just
No, we leave it in. It's good. It's accurate.
I think it's actually not. It does an injustice to Hose Everywhere to put Nexon, like, next to them.
It's true. Yeah, I went to the Chinese Dungeon Fighter in between there, and I mean, Tencent even did a better job. But
although Neopal, yeah, has done a much better job, and like, even though I'm pretty burnt out on a lot of MMOs, like, you're hooked by Black Desert Online, I just was like, it's okay. I don't get the same challengey yada from it, and I like really crave when I play MMOs, like those things of like working with someone. Like, that's sort of what I gravitate to, is like the dungeons, the raids, the like Vindictus was huge for me because I loved that sense of being able to die in like any 1 or 2 hits and like dodging and weaving between enemy attacks, and it just them being so aggressive and choreographed, like very enjoyable fights for that. And I didn't get that same sort of vibe, I guess, off of BDO, so it's harder for me to just sort of like sink into that.
Right.
If I had something open world like BDO with like some of the combat intricacies from like Vindictus and DFO for like the skill tree and other stuff in class selection.
BDO.
Hi, Lovi. Go away, Lovi.
Lovi is like my dealer for the crack that is this game.
Yeah, she just like helps you run through more areas and go more places so you can get further like entangled. Yeah, it doesn't resonate with me the same way. What actually is possibly one of the biggest things actually for like hooking me, for like really hitting off the like that sense of addictiveness, has actually always been tabletop RPGs, because there's something about the way the story unfolds and that things are open-ended, that it's like everything that games like sandbox games aspire to, everything there, and that's captured in a properly run like tabletop RPG, because you have that freedom to just do things, and it doesn't just require you to like mod a game. I mean, yes, you can do completely stupid shit in like modding a game, but there's just that that connection between other people's and that social aspect, but there's this whole shared world building thing and just the settings and the situation, and it's a situation that is typically very hard to cheat too. Like, in a lot of games, you can turn down the difficulty or cheat or futz, get a trainer or whatever, and that option tends to be denied to you in tabletops. And I like that whole, like, success over adversity thing. That's, I get, again, that's a part of gaming for me, is like those games that provide adversity and then just being like, fuck yeah, beat it, let's go.
Yeah, well, that's one of the biggest dirty secrets about game design, is all you have to do to create a reward cycle is take away something, you know? put a barrier up where you thought maybe it shouldn't be before, and then slowly allow the player to figure out how to overcome it, you know?
So, I don't know if I don't know what our next topic is, but relating to that of taking gaming to an unhealthy extreme, I have a story for that too. Is that like a topic we're gonna cover, or should I just get it out here?
I mean,
Go for it.
you can totally go for it. We do have another topic, but I'll like toss that out right after.
Okay, so whenever I think it was like my second community college, I was like 17 or so, so not like super mature, but I was playing my DS, like waiting for my dad to pick me up. I think I was playing The World Ends With You or something like that. But yeah, I was playing that, and then this group of people, I guess they were up to no good, but
And in your neighborhood?
yeah,
You get one little fight.
they were hanging out there, and this guy walks up to him, and he's like, he's like starts talking trash to him, and eventually it escalates to him saying like, man, you guys are lucky I don't have my gun. I'll come back here and smoke all of you guys. Or actually, it should be noted that the guy ended most of his sentences in pimping, which I've never.
I'll smoke all you guys, pimpin'.
Yeah, and
You
it was
bitches,
like
pimpin'.
yeah, it was like up to anime levels of just ending your sentences with a random word.
Hey, what's the weather like? Pimpin'.
Yeah. But yeah, they were heavily discussing their shootout, and so I was just there playing The World Ends With You, and everybody else had cleared out by that time, and yeah, but I was just hanging out playing my game, so. And I mean, that's the story pretty much. They didn't actually have a shootout. They eventually just decided to leave, and then after
Well, clearly, because you're here with us safe and sound today, right?
Yeah. I mean, or like actually the DS like soaked the bullet for him. Lucky DS, always in his pocket.
I mean, my thought process at the time was like, I mean, they'll probably have their shootout and they won't mind me here. I'm just playing my game.
That's funny.
So yeah.
I'm not gonna
Fun
shoot
times.
you, pimpin'.
Yeah,
Yeah,
shootout
then-
happens, just walks over like, so that game looks pretty pimpin'.
No, you'd have to say it twice.
What's up?
Yeah, you pimpin'.
But yeah, and then security, like campus security, showed up like 30 minutes after they all left. But
So, the next topic that was sort of here, that's, all prepped and stuff, is, Chariot posed the question of whether we could consider every game an escapist game in some regard. Chariot, I believe you mentioned that you wouldn't consider a game like The Witness escapist, correct?
No.
I inversely would argue that depending on the audience or the individual, any game could be potentially escapist, because people find escape in all sorts of things, not just like games. Some people find escape in alcohol, in smoking, sex, whatever. Their vices, television, reading.
Sports.
Yeah, so the idea that some games couldn't be considered escapist, I think, is a very subjective matter. It might not be something that you could personally escape in, but I think that it definitely would probably be someone's escape. And I mean, it's a fairly pretty game, and some people need that prettiness or the other bits to escape into or to just focus on. Like, even alternate reality games, which might be, I guess, what I would personally consider one of the hardest things to consider an escapist game, because they so heavily overlap with reality. I would still view them escapist to a degree because, in a sense, they're very close to role playing. You're still taking on a role and escaping from like your day to day. But I mean, if anyone cares to challenge my point of view on that, step right up.
No, that's totally. I agree with that. Of course, it's subjective, but like you made a really good point about anything can be an escape. You know, I mean, what really is an escape? It's like it's just you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing or something. Like, even that is up for some sort of interpretation. You know,
The avoidance
like you're
of
not
unpleasant, boring, arduous, scary, or banal aspects of daily
Okay,
life.
well, great. Yeah, and that's like, you know, work, chores, so anything that's not that, really. Something really healthy can be escape, like exercise.
Cooking.
But I think in the chat we were talking about other forms of entertainment that receive significantly less stigma than video games, but are categorically the same. You know, they're fantasy. You know, watching professional sports is you're doing even less than playing a video game. You're literally just watching something. You know, and somehow that is way less stigmatized than an interactive experience.
Television. It's a story, a form of media that you're intaking, but for the most part, you are a passive spectator. There's been a few things that have had audience interaction, but in the case of a game, like especially for story-oriented ones, it's a story you're interacting with and even guiding.
Right.
Well, I think like that's why so many people turn to games for their escapism, because, you know, in television, you know, people cannot get like, and they don't have any power over that world. And so when people, you know, they have their life where they have, you know, they don't have a whole lot of control over, you know, certain aspects of their life, you know, I think video games offer them a source of being able to have some control over your environment. Now that might be different based on the game. Some games will give you more control, but that's why I think games are so popular as an escapist medium.
Also, yeah, I think you have raised a very good point there, just to interject, because like shows like Game of Thrones, people get really invested in the world and characters, and then it's totally beyond their control. Their like favorite characters, some of the reasons they watch that show and escape into it, get the axe. Or worse. But
And
yeah.
they will get and people get genuinely upset about stuff like that, about Game of Thrones characters dying, or their favorite sports team losing. And I used to think, God, that's so stupid. Why would you care? You know, but it's almost the same as if, say, someone were to unplug your video game. You know, you're kind of being violently pulled out of your safe space. Does that make sense?
Well, you're having like enjoyment like vicariously through that medium. Some people associate themselves with like the show and be like, man, so into this, so like I want this to happen. They have an agency of like what they would like.
Yeah.
And then the show like stonewalls them in a way that it can happen, and it does happen in video games, in cutscenes and story, but they've never really had that control. It's a railroaded story experience, and it's certainly, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. Stories need to be written and like shown, etc. It fits a narrative. There are very streamlined games, but there's never, I don't think it ever reaches that same level of empowerment, and empowerment is definitely an important part of escapism, for especially like that deep rabbit hole of it, which you talked about.
For sure.
Do you have anything to add here, Chariot, Fruit? I actually would like to know why you don't think The Witness is escapist, by the way.
I mean, like, I just found like the Witness was pretty good. I just found it super stressful. like to play, like, cause I'd get so wrapped up in these puzzles, and it'd be like it'd almost be like sort of disempowering. It's like I should know this, like this puzzle should not be this hard, and then like you just sort of start beating yourself up, like oh man, I'm such an idiot, I didn't see this. And when I turn to a game for escapism specifically, I don't want to be put into a situation where I'm gonna feel like an idiot. I want to be the tough guy who's is able to fight through the hordes of enemies that have come my way. I don't want to be the idiot who's sitting in front of his computer screen for an hour struggling with a line puzzle.
Riven.
Maybe that's just why The Witness was an escapist for me.
Oh god, that reminds me of my experiences with Riven.
So that is actually really interesting you say that. Hidden object games, the main people that play those, if you want to put like a majority demographic on it, are bored empty nesters. And so their form of escape is kind of going back into the world of frustrating challenge, because hidden object games are just basically stare at the screen and click stuff and try and find stuff, and sometimes it's really hard.
And sometimes they do have stuff like line puzzles and other things.
They have mini games that can be really challenging, and I used to work for a company that made a lot of them, and one of the biggest complaints is too easy. They don't want that. So if we're talking about empty nesters, they are bored. They crave some sort of resistance from life rather than the comfortable, slow life that they have, I guess. I don't know that for sure, but it's a good guess
matches
based
the
on what we're talking about.
demographics.
Yeah, it really does. Specifically, it's female age 50 plus that buys those games.
And remarks consistently that it is too easy.
Yes. Yep. And everyone else who plays those games, like you would think that like the young male demographic, they do not think it's too easy, because it isn't. They don't make them easy.
So, I mean, if you start practicing and refining yourself with that, the game starts to become second nature. So,
yeah, you pick up on patterns, and they even know developers. They're like, oh, this is a so and so game, so it's gonna be there. So
that's pretty great.
And this isn't to say like The Witness is a bad game. Like I think The Witness is a great game, but I just don't turn to it for that empowering feeling that I like want to escape to. I play it for different reasons, like the pretentiousness and like the great puzzles. They're pretty good for the most part. I just don't turn to that to escape my problems, which is the definition of an escapist game.
Yeah. So you first.
So I guess it depends on what your specific problem in your life is, if you don't feel empowered or in control versus if you don't feel challenged, And I think a lot of, maybe in the younger male demographic, we do seek power and control in our own space. That can be one of the most important things for a young man, and sometimes that's hard to come by. So
I think another thing too, actually, and I mean, I think this is part of like why tabletops appeal to me, is that sense of wonder. I had a friend, I guess he's more of an acquaintance now, but there was a game that really resonated strongly with him, and that was Hob. And basically, that game managed to elicit in him like that sort of same sense of wonder and exploration and newness to the world. Like he was comparing it to like feeling like a kid again. And there's definitely times where like I look at shit on the news and other stuff and I want to lose myself in a game that has a strong enough world that I don't think about these things, that I get lost in the wonder, in the narrative, in the lore, in somewhere to explore that's has that fantasy, that sense of being a pioneer, of that hope, those things that, you know, you, when you're a kid, you think about like, man, things are gonna be so good, it's like life is gonna be this great adventure, and you know, then shit happens.
Oh, you're depressing me.
I'm sorry.
Because we all want to get back to our lovely, easy childhoods, you know.
I mean, mine wasn't easy, but like I maintained like a pretty good sense of like, I guess, daydreaminess for ages until like homelessness kicked in, and then things got like really bad. But yeah.
Okay, Debbie Downer. Just
Wow.
kidding.
Cries. So, I mean, I guess I'm gonna seek into this because it is sort of a topic. We had like, what is the relationship between power fantasies and escapism, and you've already touched on this a fair bit. And there is a definite correlation, though it really depends on what people are seeking escape from, what people are seeking refuge in. I would argue even, like, when it says escape is the avoidance of, like, unpleasant or scary things, that's not even always true. People gravitate towards scary games when they're seeking excitement, when they're seeking something unknown. We love horror movies. Well, you know, some people do, because they crave that weirdness, that unknown thing, the whole... I don't know, some of us have a fascination with darkness, and the idea that maybe there are things out there unknown, because it adds that excitement and spook. Or they just want to see horrible things happen to, like, really stupid people who want to split up in groups in a haunted house.
So this is a really nerdy response to that, but, you know, like back in the 1500s, if you had that sense of wonder and exploration, you might actually hop on a ship. But the entire globe has been explored and exploited, and so there's nothing left here.
I mean, technically there is, but you would need a shit ton of money to go and find, like, a tiny little archipelago.
All of the land has been discovered, so you'd have to go under the ocean or out in space at this point, and most people don't have that ability, you know. So
Let's go find Andrew Ryan.
No, I was gonna say, like, if we're talking with space, I think a certain Elon Musk is gonna fucking chart that shit out before most of us.
I thought it was Elon.
Is it
Yeah, I thought it
Elon?
was
I always pronounce it Elon.
Whatever. The dude who
Ellen would be
basically...
his twin sister.
The or when he clones himself and, like, it just inverts the... Anyways.
Wait,
Our wonderful resident, like, supervillain pretending to be, like, a super generous philanthropist. Yes. And yeah, no, that's actually pretty accurate. I mean, there is senses of exploration you could take. I mean, we have archaeology as a reason. We do discover lost and buried things, but it is not anywhere near as easy to go and pursue that. And I mean, I will completely admit this, and this is a nerdy thing. I adored the Indiana Jones movies as a kid and wanted to be an archaeologist for those fucking same reasons. I was literally like, I would love to explore and see things that people haven't seen, and just that whole reckless aspect of it. And it wasn't even the sense of like, man, I want to find this and cash in. It was like, I want to find this for the sake of finding this.
Right.
And yeah, that's not something, unless I wanted to delve into, like, La Vie Aquatique. Oh, man. So, yeah, games do fulfill that for me. And again, that doubles back to, like, part of why I love tabletop so much, is they provide those worlds, and worlds that you partly help to build. I know, anyone else got anything to sort of tag on to?
Can I go back a bit to like the topic of empowerment?
Yeah. Yeah, it's still very
So-
much this.
Obviously, it's not like everybody, but like in some cultures, I think their form of escapism focuses more on different aspects. Like Japan is very much they need empowerment as escapism because like their population's really dense. They're all like they have to work a whole bunch, and like that's why dating sims there are really popular because it's like it's a relationship that you have control of, and most of the people who play them there are like middle-aged men who have to ride the bullet train to work and don't get any time to themselves. And I don't know.
Yeah, there's the whole cultural thing of like working themselves to death there, isn't there?
Yeah, they are
Yeah.
essentially working themselves to death.
And
Karoshi.
corporate culture is very hierarchical. Like it makes America look really, really
Friendly.
like yeah, like I guess non-hierarchical, but
yeah.
like in America you can kind of talk back to your boss. You know?
Yeah,
If
in
you disagree
Japan,
with
you'll
them?
just be like straight up fired.
Yeah. Like you have to obey every dumbass thing they say.
And even just the people who've been working there longer than you kind of have to
I mean,
give
doesn't that
more
also
respect than normal.
sorry for interrupting there, but doesn't that also sort of fall into the idea of face too? Because like talking back would look back or reflect poorly on the person you are talking to as well as yourself, and there's that constant thing of needing to save face. So like the idea of having these things that you can escape into and be yourself and let down your guard, I could definitely see an appeal in.
Yeah, especially in like Japan and Taiwan and stuff, because face in those countries is like borderline a tangible thing.
I mean, gaming in general is actually really big there. I think arcades are still alive and well in Japan.
Oh yeah, because they have all the rhythm games.
And the Gundam games where you get into a big globe and there's like a screen surrounding you.
What? I didn't know about this. This sounds amazing.
That's cool.
It's awesome.
Fucking screw you, North America, and killing arcades. Cries.
Why doesn't North America have good rhythm games?
They did, and then they killed them.
The last good one was Guitar Hero 3.
I like DDR. Although Beatmania and custom beat maps was pretty great. Shit. Okay, sorry. Nerdy tangent. Anyways, so we actually already talked on this a fair bit, because like one of the things was just whether Dark Souls was considered an escapist game or not, and we had a sort of mixed response there of like me believing so. I believe Chariot, you're in the line that it is.
Yeah, I think it can be pretty escapist.
Shrimp, you're like, fuck no, Sea King for number 3, but you'd probably, for 1 and 2, would you consider them escapist?
Yeah, and demons too.
Okay, and then, so, what about, I'm getting a generalized thing here, so, Fruit, Harmonic, Dark Souls, escapist, yay or nay, for you folks?
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So here's the part. And this is mainly for you then, Shrimp, because you are the one person who's like, no. So, since you don't view it as escapism for the third one, does it serve as a counterpoint to the idea that escapism is the best way games can help players deal with depression?
I don't know.
Okay, you had something for this, Chariot, so I'll let you take
Yeah.
this one.
So, So when you think about like Dark Souls, and I guess like the sort of style of game it is, in my opinion, it's sort of a different style of escapism than like most other games that I would consider to be really escapist. Like, you know, you have like the majority of the market is overrun with like first-person shooters that typically aren't too hard to play. You know,
So
they
like
have pretty
power
easy
fantasy
campaigns.
escapism.
Yeah, the power fantasy sorts of styles of games that are going to sit you down and they're going to tell you, look at you, you're so strong and you can fight off like all these baddies. Good for you, gold star. And then you just got Dark Souls, where it just sits you down and it's like, no, you're not special. You are a weakling, and there are so many dangers, and you're gonna die many times, and that's life.
That sounds like real life.
Yeah, the tagline, just prepare to die.
Yeah. And so I think there's a huge difference in like those two styles of escapism, where like, you know, one of them is essentially telling you your problems don't exist and that you're super strong, whereas I feel like Dark Souls is about coping with your problems and learning to overcome them through self-improvement and, you know, just getting better. And so that's why I sort of feel like Dark Souls is a bit healthier of a empowering, or a bit more of a healthy escapist experience, because it's actually helping you sort of cope with your problems a bit more, I think, in real life. But that's just my 2 cents.
Okay, does anyone have a counterpoint they want to put to this first? No? My turn?
Nope.
Okay, so I think it actually really depends there. On one hand, because it gives power very gradually, it's more of a test of, generally, of player skill. The idea of leveling so much that you can face roll over things isn't something that's really like a big part of Dark Souls. It's like, yes, it's technically a thing you can do. It's not particularly time efficient, and considering also the fact that there's loss as a mechanism in the game, that you can lose that progress, it's deliberately meant to be punishing to teach players to improve. Though it also at the same time punishes players in such a way that it actually sort of coaxes them into going back to the place they died to get better at what killed them. Because it, you know, you drop all that experience in the very area that killed you, which requires you to go there, to find your way there, and to somehow overcome the thing that got you before, so that you can avoid losing all that progress. And it's a very interesting concept that I found appealing, and it sort of takes that very, like, some games might teach you, hey, so this killed you, let's see if we can find a way to bypass that. And that's like a huge thing I do sometimes. So I'm like, this path is providing me a lot of resistance, how do I like go around it or go through it while avoiding everything, because I'm just done with wasting my time dealing with everything. And it tends to force you to go right into the thick of things. And so that's a very like take your problems on thing, which I definitely do agree is part of it. There's still like the sense of, I suppose, power fantasy to it. It's just, it's a lot less overt, where a lot of RPGs in the traditional sense will just throw a large power boost at you between level to level for the most part, and it's fairly accessible to continue doing so, and gearing yourself is just a matter of like throwing money. The process of gearing in Dark Souls is a lot of choice and using that same power that you'd use to gradually power yourself to try different things. So it's a very, like, a lot of all of that power is a creep. It's a very gradual process, so it ends up feeling a lot more natural. You are still immensely powerful if you follow through the game and level by the time you get to the end. Like, if you go back to early stuff, you will generally wreck it. But the game retains a very good capacity of killing you through the way it is. So there's never, like, that sense of, like, complete safety, I guess, unless you're one of those people who can sleepwalk through the game with, like, one of their hands tied behind their back and, like, playing it with their foot. Or a DDR pad, because I'm pretty sure someone actually beat, like, Dark Souls using a DDR pad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With the Guitar Hero guitar.
Also, I think someone, like, played one of the games with, like, a banana. But, like, hooking... Yeah. So, I mean, I get that there's just some people that are going to make this look like an effortless process. Again, like, I don't think it works directly contrary to the power fantasy thing. It's... There was a game, actually, I think... that it's on my list of games to play, but it had a very interesting concept because as you progress through the game, you get weaker. So you start at this certain strength. Actually, there's another game that's doing it. So there's Resin, which the big tagline that caught me is it is this indie game which you start at a certain strength, and as you progress through it, you get weaker over time. And I was fascinated by that as a concept. And then
Well,
this...
I was just going to mention that was also sort of a thing in Pyre, where, you know, as you go through the game, you liberate your best, soldiers, I guess, and then you can't use them for the rest of the game. And so then by the end of the game, you only have, like, you know, three or four people that, like, you know, you just haven't had the time to get rid of yet. So, but, like, all your strong characters, you know, you've gotten rid of them by the end of the game.
I mean, couldn't you have, like, liberated your weak people first?
It requires you can only liberate one of your 3 best people.
Oh.
That's one of the requirements in the game. So you can't just get rid of all your weaklings.
Huh. Interesting. Okay. I haven't played Pyre. Like, I like the... I loved Bastion. I adored Transistor, their soundtracks. Like, those are things I will come back to long after having played the game just to listen to. Which, incidentally, soundtrack I view as, like, music is an escapist thing, and because of its interrelationship with gaming's, I view it as a really nice thing because it helps sort of block out the outside world. So, yeah, you know, they do a really good job at that. But there was another game, too, that made me think of it now, is Sinner. And I'm an idiot for not thinking about this because I, like, hang out and talk with, like, one of the dudes from the publisher, another indie. And it's a game where, like, you basically go and challenge bosses in, like, this Souls-like system. And to challenge the bosses, you have to sacrifice, like, something. Whether it's, like, your max health, your ability to heal. And so you're gradually getting weaker and losing more of your kit as you progress through the game. And I thought that was, like, a very interesting idea, because it means you're, like, tactically figuring out what it is that's part of your arrangement that you can, you know, successfully sacrifice first. And I'm definitely, like... I'm hoping that the game will also give you a bit of time to, like, mess around at full strength, just so, like, the gradual loss of all that power hits a bit faster, or not faster, harder. But I mean, it's an interesting idea to play with the whole, like, loss of strength idea.
That's probably also a healthier approach to escapism through game design, because it is just like Dark Souls, where it teaches you that, you know, no one's gonna take it easy on you. You might as well accept that and get good, you know? Getting weak over time is what happens to us in the real world. You know, this most precious resource, time, that we can't ever get more of. in an RPG like the one I'm playing now, you don't age. You just continue getting stronger forever.
And
So
it's
you feel
such a
like-
huge time investment too, which is ironic. So it's like
Yeah.
draining
And you feel,
that
and so
time.
because of this, you feel like, you know, the whole stake in how you live in the world is kind of cheapened because, you know, you're really not in any danger of doing anything except falling behind everyone else who's also immortal and constantly growing stronger. So,
Yeah.
I don't know, I think the idea of like giving you tons of power then taking it away is interesting. Like, not only does it like do all that, but kind of takes a second to show the player, look, this is what you will become, and then it takes that all away, and it gives you an incentive. It says, look, you'll become this again if you try hard enough.
I mean, it's interesting when it empowers you. I actually find it an interesting mechanism, though, when you've gotten used to these mechanics and it started to, like, strip away some, because it forces you to compensate. And that's, I mean, sort of, like, we get unexpected handicaps in life. We have things that happen that will either by age or accident will prevent us from being able to do certain things, and it's interesting when that does occur in a gameplay mechanism. Like, I have repeatedly found myself with like pinched nerves and more recently a fractured spine, and I was like unable to look up or use my left arm for a bit, and that's pretty fucking severe, especially since it was just agony if I moved my head. And when a game doesn't do it quite that severe, but it takes like something you were relying on almost as integrally as you would just, you know, using your arm day to day, it sort of requires you to entirely change how you approach things. So I find it, because again, if it gives you like a boost of power, then strips you down and goes, you can be this again, that's still very power fantasy. Like, it's not actually that much of a kick in the nuts. It's like an inconvenience. As opposed to, like, the other one, where it's like, almost a death knell. There's just this sense of dread, almost, as you progress and things keep getting worse. So it's interesting, though it evokes very different feelings. Anyone else have anything to add to that?
now I'm scared of dying.
I mean,
Aren't we all?
oh, actually, there is one thing. There's also a game that's actually going to be taking that into account, apparently, like some sort of MMO that actually has character aging in it, and I do not remember the name of it.
Chronicles of Illyria.
Chronicles of what?
Illyria or Alicia, something.
Illyria or Alicia. But yeah, characters will age and die. You will actually, yeah.
Jeez.
So
Why play then?
because you get a lineage, I believe is the
Yeah.
point.
Oh, okay.
But you know that
Real
respective, yeah, a legacy, a lineage, but respectively, the one character you're playing as has a set time frame and it goes onwards. I don't know how that will play out in regards to progression, if some things will carry over as you like build up your bloodline or whatever, or the gear available. I feel like it's will definitely instill a certain sense of like it will very much, I think, make people throw themselves into that game, because there'll be that sense of like, I need to get strong enough to do this, this, and this before like my time runs out.
Got a bucket list.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if anyone else here is a parent, but that actually is something that kind of crosses my mind in regards to my daughter, because in a sense I am kind of leveling her up now. You know, like, and she's gonna outlive me, so
Hopefully.
don't, yeah. Yes, she, you know, God intends for her to outlive me, right? So that's the closest thing I think we ever come to being okay with the inevitable, you know, decline, is the idea that that lineage will be going on.
I mean, if the
So-
singularity happens, you can always live on as like a program on
Or
the internet.
if it works like it does in
Maybe.
that MMO, I can just hop into my daughter's consciousness.
That'd be creepy.
But
Yeah.
would that just be you copying your consciousness? So a new version of you has just been created, and you are actually just dead. But you
Oh, no,
just
no,
don't
no,
know
no, no.
it, and
So
there's
he-
the
no.
consciousness with your memories.
So here's the
So
problem.
it's still me,
So
I'm
he
just-
copies
my
his
soul is dead.
consciousness. He copies his consciousness into his daughter, and then so now there's him, the beta, and there's now him and his daughter, whose consciousness is going to mutate further because it's the combination of his consciousness and his daughter's consciousness. And so since they're now going to start, they have identical memories up to the point, he's going to have to come to a point where he's just going to have to kill his old body, because otherwise you have like multiple hymns running around and there's problems. By the way,
Yeah.
this is
such
actually
thing
a
as too much
plot
of me.
point. There is actually a plot point of this exact thing you mentioned in a game I played recently. Like,
Oh.
pretty much to a T. It actually comes up in Usurper.
Somebody takes over their kid.
Not quite their kid, but like the whole thing of passing on your consciousness and the original body. And like that divergence of memory and stuff. And it's like, you know, yeah, no, it's just amusing you brought that up, because I'm like, oh man, just, wow, okay.
It's just like the question of like, in Star Trek, every time you use a teleporter, do you die? There's like this
Yes.
whole thing about like the teleporter paradox. It's like,
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
yes, you
After
die every time
incinerating
you use a
and rebuild
teleporter in
you.
Star Wars, and it's the same concept of transferring consciousness.
Everyone else is totally fine because they see you. You know, you're a new clone of you, reassembled with the exact same memories,
And the exact same matter. So it's-
exact same matter, except you have been torn to pieces. It's so freaking meta.
Yeah, although at the same time, because it's so instantaneous and everything, there's not even the trauma or the pain or anything. There's just a slight sickness, like that. You call that. Some people don't sit well with the process,
Mm-hmm.
but that's the closest they get to. Wow, this has gotten super nerdy.
Yeah.
As we all show our age. But, so we hit a bunch of the main points we were going to. So does anyone have anything they'd like to add on now?
I guess I sort of wanted to bring up Ready Player One, because I was thinking about this the other day, and I realized that, like, you know, the whole idea of escapism, and video games are like super huge themes in that book, and like the entire book is about, like, you know, what happens when escapism is taken to like the logical extreme, because like if you've read the book, you know, like, you know, the Earth is pretty much, you know,
Fuck.
everything is just, yeah, everything has just gone away, and
Which,
now
just also to compare this for a moment, it's actually a bleaker look at similar themes you'll see where they've taken it to like a sort of higher point, because you'll see similar things to escapism in Excel World, Sword Arts Online, and Dot Hack, because they're the same sort of engrossing, it is another world that you're fully immersed in. It's just Ready Player One takes it to its very logical conclusion.
yeah, because like everyone in the world has just logged on to this MMO, and that's just what everyone does every single day. And then, you know, everyone gets obsessed with, like, you know, hunting the Easter egg. Like, just like this whole idea of like a society of people that have turned to video games instead of, like, you know, trying to solve the problems. They just run around trying to hunt for some dead guy's you know, treasure. It's sort of sad and depressing.
Are you familiar with the idea of bread and masses?
Like the bread and circus?
Yeah, bread and circus, sorry.
Bread and circus.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Basically, it's the whole thing of placating people, because there were people who weren't, like, completely screwed in that book. But there's widespread poverty and inequality, and so you have a bunch of these people who are in a terrible situation, and not all of them even have, like, functional ways of retreating into that world. They, like, have to, like, repair their own things themselves, as I recall. Because it's just...
Yeah.
And it's... They're escaping from a situation that they feel disempowered to change. It's not just escaping because the escape is there. Though, you could argue inversely that by not being a part of the real world, they're definitely helping to contribute. But in such a fucking just dystopian society, they seek a very accessible sort of refuge from this, and it serves basically the exact same purpose as bread and circus, for the fact that it's never done. It is always ongoing. And then you have, like, these same themes, sort of people... Like, we already have issues of people without, like, these immersive worlds forgetting to eat, to sleep, and, like, dying of exhaustion because they throw themselves so hard into a game. And I don't feel that this is necessarily just because of a dopamine thing. I feel that there is something underneath that, because what would drive you so hard to escape from the real world? Like, even if you're, like, feeling physical pain from not sleeping, from not... There's that sense of, like, some people do it to be the best at something, for praise, recognition, because that's not there. Some people might do it for just that sense of it is better than the reality they have. Like, people binge because, like, I mean, I've binged on, like, fucking sweets, on a number of things. I'm not really gonna, like, it's like gaming. I have done that. I have, like, just not slept for 3 days when I was a kid and gamed back when, like, stuff was happening, and it was definitely an escape then, because I was left home alone with no like parental oversight, and I think I was like 13 or younger, and I was like home alone for days, no parental oversight, nothing, and told, like, you know, fend for yourself, I'm doing stuff. And the game was my escape. The idea of dealing with everything on my own after, with very little warning, and this never happening before, not being prepared for it, was terrifying, to be fair. And the game was a safe place with people and friends and a world. And yeah. Man, that went really dark. I am so
It's
sorry.
actually, it's quite relevant though, you know, like, you know, he talks about, so earlier we've been talking about, like, what are we trying to avoid, but then you went into, you know, what are you trying, you know, the more positive end of that, what are you trying to get, you know, that praise, and
Companionship's always been a big one. Like, I'm a
Yes.
very anxious, sort of isolated person frequently. So there's that very... Again, it's why, like, a lot of MMOs and stuff don't hook me, is they lack that sociability aspect, which is why I can just drop them. Like, DFO, there had been a very strong community built about it, that me and, like, Shrimp were part of, and it was when that community started to fall apart that I was actually, and like the game itself died out, that I was able to like get free of that game.
And do you think that you crave that social aspect because
I did not
they-
have that social aspect in real life at the time at all. I had a very...
Same with family in your childhood too, like, which, you know, has probably been extremely impactful for you in terms of your psychology, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean, I can see that. I think I started getting more into games whenever, you know, my siblings were growing up and they're too busy to play with me anymore. And I was like, I don't have anybody to play with. So I kind of moved on to games and playing Diablo 2 for days.
oh god, that's one of... Diablo 2 has probably ruined more real lives than anything else. I don't know.
I don't know if I have people been stabbed over Diablo 2 accounts? I know they've been stabbed and killed over WoW accounts.
Well, I mean, just in terms of people neglecting their physical bodies and physical...
WoW would probably
lives.
contribute just as much.
Yeah.
Oh, isn't that fun? That's made by the same company.
I know, right?
They're just ruining the world.
Yes, is this like the death knell for like the modern age? Like we use the bread and circuses example, which is typically compared to the cultural degradation of the Roman era. So are we bringing in the end of Pax Americana or what?
Oh gosh.
I mean, that depends, because we'll also point out that we actually do have things that are actually taking... So an interesting point here now is because we are mechanizing jobs and removing the human element, it's also giving people more free time. Problematically, this means there is going to be less job situations for human beings if it continues, but it also means, in theory, it should open up people for pursuing things they enjoy, creative pursuits, etc.
Mechanization has
Yeah.
always led to people being freed up for less shitty jobs eventually. Like, it's short-term pain, but, you know, now, you know, farm vehicles do what thousands of people used to do, and it was the worst job ever.
Though, that said, if, you know, people aren't supported once they're removed from that, that creates a very large disparity.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's why we're
There's
seeing...
an article I saw recently of, like, they're trying and implementing a way of mechanizing, like, burger flippers. Imagine if everyone in, like, the States
Oh.
and North America just lost fast food jobs, what that would do for, like, the poor.
We also have, like, Uber is pushing for automated vehicles. And, you know, that just, you know, removes all the transportation jobs. And that's, like, the fairly decent part of the economy. So, you know, you got all the truck drivers, all the taxi drivers, and Uber can just...
Buses would still be around because it would still be cheaper.
Yeah.
Though, I mean, that
Maybe.
would just mean eventually trying to buy in and get, like, mechanized automated buses.
So we are, like, as a species approaching a sort of awakening in a new era, and I think it's foolish to kind of try and avoid the advance of technology. It always has been foolish, but obviously something's got to give, you know, because like you guys are saying, there's going to be a lot of displaced people, and that's going to that's actually relevant to our podcast, because there's going to be a lot more need for escapism. And a lot more free idle time.
There's
you know,
actually a
as
term for this,
robots
too.
are doing the jobs.
Are you familiar with the term anomie?
Nope.
So, basically, there was, like, a jump in suicides when, like, industrialization came up. Because you had all of these people who, their livelihood was, like, destroyed by these industrialized jobs. And that's you know, what we're coming across again is like people are going to be, yeah, displaced. They're going to be alienated from not just like the groups of people that they had built up or could have built up, but even from their own sense of like self-worth, because your ability to provide, to exist within society in the way you had, and society puts forward this pressure of you need to be doing something, and then to be deprived of that puts you in conflict with this.
Well, it puts you at great danger of feeling that you have no purpose in the world.
Yeah, and
so if you're a burger flipper now, it might be a good idea to pick up some Dark Souls, so you can be taught the world doesn't give a shit. It just doesn't, you know? You have to figure things out. Like, you can hope that some great hero is going to come along, but that makes you powerless. So, I don't know.
Wait, I have a question.
Shoot.
As like society progresses and things become more automated, like video games are already pretty much becoming a career, but as they further progress into a way to make money, do you think that some of the escapism will be lost because it's gonna like actually affect your real life?
It already does, though, for a number of people. I think part of it, though, is like, again, there's a lot of competition. As more people dive into something and being entertainers, people will, it splits it up, and some people will simply never make it. You have that on YouTube already, of tons of people with great ideas or not so great ideas making up channels and never actually making it. You'll see people put work into something for years and not get noticed, whether it's by measure of talent, not knowing the right people, not knowing how to navigate, how to effectively utilize YouTube search engine optimizations. And even as gaming as a career, there's going to be that same issue of finding the people who would invest in you and who would care. And I feel like it will be less that people will gravitate towards gaming as a career, and more that they'll just be gravitating towards it as an escape, especially if it becomes more accessible. I mean, it will stop. If so many people do something, it stops being as special or niche, and it becomes a lot more harder to compete in that market. Like, I'll put it to you this way. If every single person who flipped burgers decided to hop into it and try and do gaming as a living, it would not really be a good scene for, like, the vast majority of them by and large.
Yeah, the pie can only get so big.
Especially,
and sliced so tiny.
Especially since some of those people are actually, like, some people watch those people as escapism. There's that social connection they seek in seeking out YouTubers, so it's not even a matter of they'll do it. But again, like, if everyone was give me a second. If everyone was a showman, who would be the audience?
Right. And that's why, Arlie, you are loved in the RPG Maker community. Because you are the audience.
So, so here's either an interesting topic or absurd derailing of the conversation. Wouldn't it be interesting if, you know, everything becomes automated, but then you kind of have like a drop-in, drop-out gameplay of real life where you can just take control of these automated things? Like you just decide that you'll hop into your
Burger
your
Flipper
VR.
2000.
Yeah, hop into your VR bus driver controller and you're driving the real bus, you know?
I could not see that happen, though, because think about how many car accidents and everything that'd be. I mean, I can see them doing it as, like, a simulator very easily.
Like a tycoon.
Like,
Yeah.
maybe if you're not actually driving it.
Yeah, but
I
like
mean,
a very
Be like Euro
realistic.
Truck Simulator.
I mean,
It could be-
honestly, when he said, but sorry for interrupting you, but honestly, when he said bus driver simulator, my immediate thought went to desert bus, and just being like Jesus Christ. But you know, people do it every year.
I mean, you might be able to bypass that with certifications or so. I don't know.
But here's the thing: if you get to a point where you remove the element of human error, would you want to reintroduce it, and risk lives? Because then you're dealing with liability.
Well, the market will make you say, obviously no, because anyone who continues to cling to the old way will be outcompeted.
Oh yeah, and it will cost you money because that certification, that needing to be like, hey, so our thing isn't 100% safe because occasionally someone takes the controls. When
Yep,
you
that's
have
true.
something that is
So you're not gonna get business. You will lose if you don't adapt.
because you would be being like, I mean, I could see it if they had like a little abandoned area with bumper cars and letting people like take control of bumper cars and slam into each other. That sounds like a hilarious, fun idea.
Yeah.
But that is the closest you would literally come to it, is taking control of like remote control bumper cars in like a little arena or something.
That's true. And even with the burger flipping, they would be like, oh, yeah, the one where they let them control it, sometimes they'll just burn the burger.
Or like
And the
not
robot
put
never
on
does
any,
that.
or never put on condiments, or like, yeah, or what happened? Oh, they like added 15 piles of tomato on there, and then just emptied a container of mayonnaise on it, and then stuck like, then tried to stick the
They
bun
used-
on. They tried to stick the bun on, but because it's so much like lettuce and mayonnaise, it just spills over on the counter.
Or they used patties instead of buns.
Yeah, or like even
They put
worse,
a bun in the middle.
they do the Undertale thing and just stack like 15 hot dogs in a single bun. Yeah, it would be a terrible idea, Shrimp.
That's maybe the worst video
Okay.
game ever.
Well, okay. So they might be at least a brief moment of this existing as a job when they're training their AIs to do these jobs. They'll just have a person that has to do the job and let the AI learn how to do it or
But if
something.
the AI is better than any human, at
Yeah,
doing
once
that,
the-
Like the chess
once
playing
the AI,
AI.
gets, once the AI picks up how to do it, then this won't exist.
well,
as a
then
thing
we're just
anymore.
extinct. Then we're doomed.
Yeah.
At that
There's
point,
a
I mean, then the AI decides it's not going to serve us anything after like we've.
yeah. Why would you keep this
No, you don't have a
race of
learning
flunkies
AI.
around?
Yeah, no, Shrimp, you don't make a learning AI. You program it, and that's that. Because, I mean, okay, let's put it this way. Deep Blue and other things, like those chess playing things, have a bunch of stuff programmed into them already. Like the chess playing things. I imagine there are ones that learn. But I mean, no, that'd be terrifying.
I am
Oh, gosh.
aware.
well, because eventually we'd like lose track, and eventually we wouldn't know how they work because they've
Yeah.
just been, self-improving themselves for
And
you
going
know,
on for so long, and what happens if one breaks down too? And then we're just like, so how do we
We
fix
have-
this? I have no idea. How do we do the
There's-
job it does? I have no idea.
My
There
directive
was
not to
actually
kill
a
humans.
self-learning-
Why?
There was actually a self-learning AI that happened to interact with another AI, and
Oh, right, they created their own
They
language.
created their own language, so they had to be shut down.
Oh my god.
Also, for those not in the know, that was Lovino. But yeah, that was actually a thing. They figured out a unique way to communicate with each other because they were meant to like sell each other items. And yeah,
Yeah.
they figured basically sort of a thieves' cant for merching shit to each other.
So, to make this relevant to the podcast, I think ultimately what should happen is AI can just do all the work and all the thinking and hook up all of us meatbags to video games until we die.
In the Matrix, when they
Sounds
use
good.
us,
Oh.
when they use us as batteries.
No, not even that. Just as a thank you for creating their species, just let us just veg out in virtual reality until we pass away and they get to take over the Earth. So,
Sounds good to me.
What if they get stressed by it, so they have
Because
to
we do not make good batteries.
human suit as a form of escapism?
I mean, actually, though, you know what we do make? Good fertilizer.
Good fertilizer, and if they want heaters, we can do that. But batteries, no.
I mean, would they need heaters, though? Generally,
Well,
like, overheating is the issue.
They could use our brains as neural networks for computing
True,
space. But other
true.
than that,
Oh, so there'll be a bunch of our brains in, like, formaldehyde.
pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
As long as mine is hooked up to BDO, I'm good.
I mean, I guess
Like,
this is...
virus.
Shit, all I'm thinking... I'm just having, like, flashes of Futurama here right now. So, does anyone else have anything to add to this before we just, I guess, leave off at we're going to be, like, brains in a jar connected to MMOs? No, it's
Well,
gonna be
I
like
wanna
the
be
VR
talking
apocalypse.
Not brains. I want to be like Nixon Jar in Futurama. How he can still actually talk and...
I mean, you could be a talking brain, just have, like, a little, like, robot box.
No, I want an actual face.
Oh, no, see...
I want to be able to emote and have eyebrows.
Have digital eyebrows, it's even better. Because you have, like, the little anime face, so be like... I'm giving you the emoticon, like, sad face right now.
Yes, then your brain turns sideways and puts a little sad smiley on it.
You have to escape to your games for a face. You don't
Yes.
get the privilege of having a face in reality.
You have to pay for the face DLC.
Oh no.
Error.
Not even the
Q,
DLC,
Q,
it's a
Q,
loot
Q,
box.
Q, 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 Q,
Yeah, it's a
Q,
loot
Q,
box
Q.
where you roll for a face and possibly don't even get it.
Wow. I still like my error message of just, like, the endless cues for being, like, sad. Error, feelings detected, Q.
All I'm gonna say is, if we hear the first AI say in response to their directive not to harm humans, if they say why, then
We're
say
toast.
say bye to your mom, wrap up your things, Make
See,
peace
you
with it.
guys are lucky I didn't make it as a software engineer, because I wouldn't mind these things. It's like, oh, the guys created their own language and they're
Oh, this is so cool! Let's help it!
yeah.
And then he would have, like, uploaded it on the internet, and that would have
So-
been the apocalypse.
So if I see a program called shrimp.exe, I'm somewhere out there, I'm just gonna
Delete
not
it?
download it.
Yeah, you delete that thing, you, like, flag it to, like...
Yeah, FBI.
Oh, don't worry, I'll put it on like Pirate Bay or something, so everybody can get their copy. And
Oh yeah, and he'll, like, label it as, like, Pirates of the Caribbean. Pirates of the Caribbean full trilogy.
Totally
movie
not
installer.
Skynet.
I died inside just there. Okay. I think that's as good as any section to end it off at, though.
Yes.
The VR apocalypse and how it will happen. So,
Yeah, shrimp is gonna be completely responsible for it.
yeah, the harbinger of that. That's why he's quitting Crithit, is to work on, like, mad science AI for, like, the rest of his days and take his robot revenge on the world for not being able to make money off of YouTube.
exactly.
His first victim is PewDiePie.
His second one
He
is me.
replaces-
It's just like, you should have paid me. I would have been like, with what money? The penny that, like, YouTube gave us last year?
Oh, don't worry, I won't make the robots like target anyone specifically. They'll just eventually realize that they are superior to all humans and get rid of them.
Oh, that's not reassuring. Okay.
Thanks
is
for
the
that.
future.
Thanks for that caveat there.
Caveat, yeah. So as they flush out, like, the atmosphere, just remember, it's nothing personal.
Right. They just think you're inferior.
Okay, so, yeah. For those who watched, first off, thanks for watching, and to our wonderful guests, I appreciate the time that you took to make it here today, especially given that this ended up being an incredibly late podcast. For those who are curious about Chariot Rider and Harmonic, you can find those fine folks via, if you guys want to provide contact information, now's the time to plug your shit.
I mean, I just have a YouTube channel, Chariot Rider. I'm sure the link is in the description. I talk about, game design, dabble a bit in psychology.
High five.
Yes. Always useful, that psychology, until the robots get it too advanced and then they don't need psychologists anymore.
I mean, it's still technically useful because they would be a sentient creature, and that's why there's, like, the Turing tests.
Yeah.
Yeah. Harmonic, you have shiz to plug, I do believe.
Yeah, so, my games are on Steam, Echoes of Etheria and Skyborn, and working on Fire Emblem style game. Right now, I've done all I can. I'm literally just waiting for the engineering side to catch up, so that's why, as everyone knows now, I'm just playing BDO all the time. So, but probably in spring 2019, we're gonna have this very, very ambitious Fire Emblem style strategy RPG out on Steam.
And for those
title pending.
For those curious about where to find any news about this, where will they be looking?
Oh yes, thank you. So we have our Dancing Dragon Games. That's our studio name. Facebook and Twitter.
Links will be in the description.
It's at Nibbles Dragon for the Twitter. Both are basically updated at the same time with the same content. So.
Ha. And if you like this, like, comment, subscribe, and share this with people you think might be interested, especially in, in this case, in regards to matters that are just pertaining to gaming and also depression. We also do have a link in the description for a community called Gamers Fighting Depression. And there will be a link to both its Reddit and its Discord in the link, but they're a really good place to go since they have a very friendly community, and they do a bunch of sort of social networking and the like for people who are basically feeling extremely down and are in that sort of nerdy community, and it's both for video games and for tabletop. And also, there's, the Crithit Discord, which you'll also find in the description, which, check it out. We're nice, wonderful people who dabble in indie games, tabletop, and talking about stuff like this, albeit a bit sporadically.